All right. Thank you, Patreon supporters, for joining us for a spoiler talk for Survivor Song by Paul Tremblay. I think this is one of those ones where we definitely are going to work through some stuff as we talk about the book with stuff that we can't. All right. Livius is laughing because we already worked it all out, right?
Yep, correct. Yeah.
Yeah, just like our normal review, spoiler talk was also done and lost. So we're doing it again.
I guess I'm going to kick it over to you because you did a little more research on this since we last recorded the spoiler talk on Lewis and Josh, who are characters from Disappearance at Devil's Rock. In case you weren't aware of that, you listened to the episode. Now you're coming over here. So tell me a little bit more about Lewis and Josh.
Yeah. So for anybody who's familiar with Paul's previous work, Lewis and Josh are two kind of like mid-tier characters in Disappearance at Devil's Rock. They are the two friends of the kid that goes missing, basically. And as far as how they factor into Survivor Song, in the normal review I was mentioning, they were kind of playing around and ended up meeting up and helping out Rams and Nats. Before I dive into the significance, I'm just going to acknowledge that I didn't really get that was who those characters were until the kids kind of acknowledged killing or being involved in the killing of someone before, but they didn't want to talk about it. Like they weren't bragging about it. It was more like they were kind of ashamed. And then in my mind, I was like, wait a minute, something's here, something's going on. And then, a couple of little hints here and there kind of clicked in. Oh, that's who they are. I think you're pretty much the same, right, Liv?
Yeah, that's about the time that I started wondering, and I didn't chase down my copy of Devil's Rock, but I figured that's where they had to be if it was from a previous work. You know what I mean? Like I knew they weren't from Head Full of Ghosts and
Cabin.
Yeah, Cabin at the End of the World, right? So I was like, I think these are the two, and the age fit. You know what I mean? So for listeners, say, well, how could you not just remember you read the book? Like we review like 35 books a year, and that one is going back 3 or 4 years now. So we're 100 something books
removed
minimum just for the podcast, removed from that story. So and the nice thing about that was that he gave them like an ending, and a really, really good ending. Look, it hasn't come up yet, but we're both kind of excited that this had an unambiguous ending, right? Because Paul's endings sometimes leave a little bit to the imagination, right? Like, not only did they get an unambiguous ending, they really got a nice send-off.
Yeah.
And I don't think we talked about this as much the first time we recorded all of this, but a really touching send-off for characters that were, secondary, maybe even tertiary characters in another book.
Yeah. And so like to bring anybody up to speed who's not familiar or just forgot like we did, I went back through Disappearance of Devil's Rock just to try and understand like the significance of them showing up in another story. And so like I feel like the way that the story ended for them in Disappearance at Devil's Rock was their friend went, the story was their friend went missing. They eventually at the end, spoilers, at the end of Disappearance at Devil's Rock, they find out their friend died, and there's other things involved, but they first of all, they witnessed and were kind of party to, even though they didn't want to be, someone killing their uncle, and then things spiraled out of control from that, and then that's why their friend went missing and eventually was found dead. And the overall feeling I got for those two characters was that they just didn't get to do what they should have to help. Like, that was kind of their unresolved ending. Like, their lack of a closure was that they didn't get to help their friend. They didn't save their friend. And so their ending in that book is just absolutely like not satisfying. And so introducing them in this book was great because they got to be useful. And it's funny because in this book, they at some point they realize, oh, we're not the main characters in this movie, because they kind of speak in a like we're in a horror movie type fashion, and they realize, oh, we're the randos that meet up with the main characters. And so that was like, it was disappointing, and it set you up to think, oh, well, they're just going to get that kind of lack of closure in this as well. So when he does the interlude and gives them their closure, like they helped get the protagonist to where they needed to go, and there's that moment where they just bike away, and you think, oh great, we're just losing them again. But then they get their final ending. That was just, it was magical. It was wonderful.
I agree. And a nice touch, in some ways, kind of breaking the fourth wall, right? With their whole declaration that they were pretty sure they were the main characters, right? And then that they realized that they're not. And I love that. I love that. And I know I mentioned it the first time around, but we're all the main characters, right? Like, that's the only story we know. It's our point of view all the way around. So for someone to, even a character, to realize that they need to take a back seat, that the story's not about them, just another really nice touch in this book that had, a series of nice touches. Like, we talked about a lot of them, in the proper review, and we're talking about some of them here. I quite enjoyed that. Now, let's get to the climax of this book, right? That's the other thing that needs talking about. So Natalie doesn't exactly make it. And, I kind of saw it coming that she wasn't going to make it. She's with a doctor, for fuck's sake. I knew the C-section was going to happen. I didn't necessarily see it happening under the constraints that it did, right? So Natalie is well into full-blown whatever weird viral rabies pandemic, when Rams has to basically tie her down and extract this baby from her with like a paring knife and a hunting knife and some fucking duct tape. Like, definitely not the way you would think this would go down. And heartbreaking through that part, but again, very nicely done.
Yeah. So as far as like where in the book you knew that Natalie wasn't going to make it, it's when she has to try to drink water when they're still hanging out with Lewis and Josh before they get, kind of the next step along the way to the clinic. And like she tries, and like it's so beautifully done, because, and I don't understand how like the hydrophobia or whatever works with rabies, but like even when she's like reaching out for the bottle of water, her hand starts shaking and stuff, and like so she's physically unable to try to drink water. And then when the water actually like makes contact, it's like it's revolting, and it's obvious that the infection has broken the brain barrier or whatever, which means it's too late. It's not curable. So at that point, that's when it's not looking good for Natalie. You just don't know how it's going to go down. And so the beautiful thing about that is Romola knows and Natalie knows, but they don't give up. They keep going. Like regardless of the fact that like they know Natalie's pretty much done for, there's still that baby to worry about. And it doesn't change their motivations at all. They have to get to where they need to go so they can take care of that baby, ultimately leading to, after they get kicked out of the bus for being discovered as being infected in that creepy abandoned house, that fucked up scene.
Yeah. So I guess it's hydrophobia. So I looked it up, but hydrophobia, fear of water, is the historic name for rabies. The fuck?
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, maybe they didn't realize it was an infection. They just thought like, hey, this person's freaked out by water.
Dude, how weird is that, though, that you get something that makes you afraid of water? And here it says, in the later stages of an infection in which the person has difficulty swallowing, shows panic when presented with liquids to drink, and cannot quench their thirst. So think about this for a second. Well, yeah, they can't quench their thirst because they're too afraid to fucking
Right.
drink water. So I don't know, that sentence probably, not sure that. I think one causes the other, like they're not two separate symptoms, which is how.
That's weird because like there has to be psychology involved, because you have to understand that water is a beverage to drink in order to have the phobia of it. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's like a mental awareness level. Like I was reading recently that schizophrenia, you know how it presents with paranoia and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In other countries, I think India, schizophrenic people have positive experiences with like hearing voices and stuff. But in the United States, it's a terrifying and negative experience. So like,
oh, that's weird.
Just based on the culture that you live in, a mental illness affects you differently. So I won't understand that, but yeah, that's a little crazy.
I kind of want to look into this a little bit, because that's the thing. Here it says shows panic when presented with liquids to drink. So I wonder if you're just sitting by a lake, like if you're terrified of the water, or is it literally just the
drinking?
Yeah, I think it might be just the drinking.
Because if it's raining, are you running away from the rain?
Right.
Anyway.
You do like I do. It rained today, and dude, I dodged raindrops on my way to the car like I was Neo in the Matrix.
Oh, wow. If I had to recast Neo in the Matrix, I would cast you.
Thanks, buddy. Be like a later version of Neo. I mean, there's a new Matrix. Anyway, let's get back on
Matrix
track.
4.
I like that we fast forward at the end of the story, and we do find out, because we're presented with a fake ambiguous ending where we don't know if the baby survived or not. My money was on the baby surviving all along.
Yeah, so, that did seem a little bit like, how do you kill the baby after all of this? Right. How could you do that to us?
And the most touching scene to me in the entire book is Natalie, when she's recording these messages on several occasions, says, uses this term sassafras and lullabies. So now we have a 10-year-old daughter, Lily, right? Was it Lily? Lily is living in the UK with her auntie Nats and Natalie's parents. I'm sorry, with her auntie Rams and her parents. And she's on a field trip. And at one point she says sassafras and lullabies to one of her little British friends, who points out to her that she says it with a weird accent, which would be, I'm assuming, the Boston accent, right? Yeah. Because, I mean, that's what Natalie talks about. So in that 2 lines of text, it really gives you a whole sense of the fact that not only did she get to listen to these messages, but that she's listened to them enough that she quotes them in a different accent, which to me was probably the closest I came to Rob bitch tears.
I'm almost crying right now while you're talking about it.
Yeah. So again, like I said, just a series of really nice touches on a story that, if we're being fair, we've seen stories like this, right? Something causes people to go crazy and they attack one another, and we're always trying to follow the people who are trying to survive. So there's not a slew of originality in a virus that causes people to attack one another. 2 things immediately come to mind. One, Rainy Night from Richard Lehman, which we reviewed here on the podcast, I think a year or 2 ago. The movie The Crazies with what's his name from Justified that you like so much.
Walton Goggins?
No, from
Oliphant?
Justified, the other one. Yeah, Oliphant. He actually plays a sheriff in that one, and it's a similar thing where there's just people attacking people through some type of odd viral infection or something. Am I thinking of the wrong movie?
I never saw it. I'm sorry. I can't.
The Crazies is 2010, and yep, Timothy Oliphant. And yeah, it's something along those lines. I don't remember if it infects how they get infected, but you know what I mean? So it's not
right.
It's not wholly original, which is fine. It's like part zombie movie, but they're not really zombies, but they attack people, so they're fast zombies, more like 28 Days Later versus like the Walking Dead. It's the series of nice touches that really makes this book what it is.
Yeah, and realistically, like, he flips it where, I mean, I think it's kind of what you're getting at is it's not a infection story. It's a survival story. And obviously the fucking name of the book, Survivor Song, which you get the understanding of the meaning of why the word song is in there at the beginning too. But yeah, it's a survivor story, and it's specifically about this pregnant woman and her bestie just trying to get through this shit. And the epilogue, that was fun too, because I'm a dummy and I didn't realize right away that the little girl was the survived baby. Like, it took me a couple of hints, like they did that vampire bunny statue thing, and she's kind of acting a little brash the way that Nats would, and then I was like, oh, I get it, this is the baby, it survived. And yeah, I would agree, the saying the thing in the different accent was just like a perfect touch, like a chef's kiss moment for, like you said, like characterizing and demonstrating like what probably this kid's childhood was, based on just those couple of lines. Very, very well done.
Anything else you want to cover before we head back and do our wrap-ups?
No, I mean, we definitely gave Lewis and Josh their... I just love when people do that. I love those types of crossover moments. And I guess, like, going back to that, not beating the dead horse or anything, but, like, I can't think of another crossover type situation where like someone got their not happy ending, but like their appropriate ending that they didn't get in the original book. I think I have never seen anything like that before, so that was a fun little surprise.
For sure. All right, come back next week. For sure, there will be spoiler talk on Wonderland by Zoya Stage. I know that because I'm like 50 pages into it. And I'm almost certain we'll have spoiler talk for that. And thanks for supporting this podcast. We appreciate you guys.